All right. So Bruce, talk to me about positions, right?
Hmm.
Like running back. Was it always in your heart? And I know you wore a couple different hats, right? You played a lot of positions. You were an athlete, right? But when in your career were you like, man, I'm a tailback? That's me.
After my freshman year of high school, you know, I came from a track background. I ran 100 and a two. Um, I always watched the greats. Always watched. My dad was a big Dallas fan, so we watched him all the time.
Yeah.
I love Barry Sanders, so I watched him all the time. And I always found myself emulating these guys. Like I literally run through from my living room to my kitchen, just dodging everything, right? So I knew then that the position was right for me. And then when you start to see success early, it's like, you know what? There's no other, don't recruit me for anything else because I'm not coming. And
Right.
I had a few schools recruit me for like corner. I think Michigan recruited me for a kick return, which means they'd have probably turned me to a corner.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, my prerequisite when I was getting recruited was, I have to play running back. And if you're not recruiting me for that, just don't recruit me.
So what was the percentage of schools recruiting you for running back versus like another position, call it kick returner or punt return?
Um,
Like where the majority of schools were recruiting you as a tailback, right?
yeah, it was about 70-30.
Okay. All
It was
right.
about 70-30.
Okay.
A couple like I know Florida came in late. Um, Pitt was on me heavy.
Yeah.
But Maryland was just home for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So talk about before we get into the recruiting journey, right? We're sticking with high school.
Hmm.
Everybody goes through adversity, right? In every football season, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you have an undefeated season. You are going to go through some sort of adversity, whether it's a fumble, whether it's a loss, or whether it's an injury, right? Talk about adversity that you went through early on in your career, right?
Hmm.
That didn't, and I'm not saying you're second guessing yourself as far as like, is this it for me? But just like, man, that was a blow that I got to overcome, right?
Well, my junior year, I ended up suffering an MCL sprain. I took a helmet straight on the knee, and I played on that the entire year. And anybody knows playing the running back position, the two major parts of your body that you don't want messed up are your ankles and your knees.
For
You know
sure,
what I mean? Because you can't move.
for sure.
And so at that particular point in time, you start to second guess whether, should I have stuck with basketball. But this game and what it provided me, the family that it provided me.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? The structure, the discipline. You don't want any of your hard work to go to waste at all just for a singular occurrence to happen.
No
And
doubt.
so I looked at it from that perspective, like, no, we're going to see this through,
Love it.
because this is what's right for me. And then my senior year, I ended up tearing my meniscus in preseason. And back in '98, meniscus tear, wasn't really up to speed on the technology that they are now.
For sure.
And so, went to the doctor and I asked him, I said, can I play on it? And they're like, yeah, but you're probably going to have your knee drained every week and you won't be able to practice.
Hmm.
And you know me, I'm like, I'm gonna go out on my shield. Like, okay, that's fine. And so literally every Tuesday I'd have my knee drained, I'd sit out Wednesday, walk through Thursday, play on Friday.
Yeah,
And I did that for a whole football season
that's crazy.
and still rushed for almost 1,200 yards.
Wow. So what'd you do after the season? Did you have to have some sort of procedure after the
Yep.
season?
I had to have surgery. I went to Temple and had surgery. And it's funny that you asked that because I had the surgery and I had just finished my visit with Maryland.
Hmm.
And so I had the surgery and we were upfront and honest, like, listen, this happened. I'm gonna get it taken care of. Does that change anything? And I mean, at the time it was Ron Vanderlyn and
Yeah,
Locks. I mean, Coach Hefner was recruiting me, and they were like, "No, it doesn't change anything."
yeah, yeah.
So I went and had to correct. I went and they just shaved some bone down. Um, Back then, now you can get a whole new meniscus. You couldn't do that back then.
For sure.
And I just wrote out.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that just shows your dedication, right, to the game, right? I mean, there's nothing like the sport of football with the camaraderie in the locker room and the teammates and your boys and your coaches. And it's like, you don't want to let those guys down, right? I mean, you do
Not at all.
anything in your power to stay on the field if you can. So talk about how you got recruited. Like back in our day, it was different, right? There was no
Mhm.
social media, there was no internet, there was no huddle, there's no Instagram, no cell phones. You couldn't even text a coach, could hardly call a coach. Like, how did you go about the recruiting process to be seen, right?
Well, back then, a lot of things were word of mouth. Um, a lot of VHS tapes getting sent out. A lot of things just happened by chance.
For sure.
And so I think with my high school, George Washington, we were known as a football powerhouse in the city of Philadelphia. So 9 times out of 10, a coach is going to come by just to ask my coach if you had any talent worth watching.
For
You know
sure.
what I'm saying? And so it was incumbent upon us to be ready when they came.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So,
Sure.
but it's definitely not what it is now. The amount of exposure that they have now, it's a blessing in disguise because they're gonna find you if you're good.
For
You
sure.
know, but just because of the overexposure of the game doesn't mean you don't go out there and put that work in.
Yeah, no doubt. No, for me at DeMatha, right, and you were the same way. We had coaches coming in and out of DeMatha, right?
Mhm.
That was one of the reasons that I went to DeMatha because as a 5'10", 150-pound quarterback, like I wasn't getting the looks, right? But if I went to DeMatha and led a team to be undefeated and started and rode the coattails of some of the other guys, the big dogs that were in my program that were getting the looks, I was going to be able to get in front of these coaches, right? A lot of these kids now go to camps, Bruce. Did you go to camps when you were in high school, like to get seen, right? How are you getting in front of these coaches outside of your own play and outside of your own school?
I went to one camp.
So did I. I went
I
to one,
went to one camp.
right?
I went to Penn State. I stayed up there for a week.
Yeah, big camp.
And the funny thing is, I would go up there and I ran a 4.22 and a 4.23,
Hmm.
right? And this is no blocks, just not knowing how to start in the 40, just as me just having, track speed.
Right.
And I remember Happy was the coach at the time. I think he was coaching running backs at the time. He's like, "Can you run this for Joe Pa later?" And I'm like, "All right,
Sure.
fine." And then I do pro agility and sprain my ankle, and
Oh,
I was out for the whole week. But having that experience of going to that camp, it allowed me to see what the competition was out there,
sure.
and allowed me to gauge myself.
Sure.
And based off of what I saw, I'm like, "Oh, I'm going to be able to go wherever I want."
No doubt. No doubt. Yeah, a lot of these kids go to these camps now. They go to showcases. They travel across the country to go to camps. I kicked myself. Obviously, everything worked out, but I kicked myself because I went to one camp. I went to
Hmm.
Maryland's camp, and it was
Hmm.
because it was local. I could drive there. It was easy for my mom, right? And Bill McGregor, my head coach, was saying, go to Maryland because that's an opportunity for you. You could have a walk on opportunity. So I was going to Maryland, showcasing my talent, but I kicked myself because I probably should have gone to more camps to get the exposure, right? Because you go to some of these camps, and even though Virginia Tech's putting it on, right, they might have 30 coaches, right?
Hmm.
Are there attending those camps to evaluating talent, right? Do you advise these kids, right, these players today, right, to go to as many camps as possible or target the camps that you might have an opportunity to play at, right?
Um, Couple things. I would target the camps that I'm interested in going to their school, number one. Number two, I would also target the lower tier camps. Y-
Interesting.
and the 1A, 1AA schools, you know what
Yeah,
I mean?
right.
Because at the end of the day, in today's game, it's all about opportunity. And that's not to say you're going to stay where you are.
For sure.
You know what I mean? With NIL, with the now being able to leave. Because remember, when you and I played, you were stuck unless you wanted to give up a year eligibility. Exactly. So I would do that. Like I do that with my son. My son's a senior at the Math now, and we target camps that we want to go to. And of course, for me, Maryland was number one on the list.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And because the last thing you want is just to limit yourself. Number one, number two, you could just become a number.
For sure.
You know what I mean? And you and I both know how that works. I think um understanding what you want out of this, where you want to go is the first step. And
Right.
then just branding yourself to all of these universities, because at the end of the day you'll be able to put on the film, the eye in the sky never lies.
For sure. For sure.
And once you put on tape what you're able to do, um talent is undeniable.
So you say pick where you want to go, right? And that's geographically, that's the school. But how important is it? And talk about you, right? How important was it for you and for our guys to build a relationship with that coaching staff? Because for me, like I went to a school because I fell in love with the coaching staff, right? Now, I only had two offers, right? But I don't think I would have gone there if I didn't care for the coaching staff, if I didn't find the love for them, if I didn't feel the love back from them, right? So like how important is it in your eyes to build relationships with all of these coaches, right?
It's extremely important, because when you think about it, at the end of the day you're going to be spending, 4 5 years with these guys. You know what I mean? Like, you need to feel comfortable where you are and who's going to be teaching you.
For sure.
You know what I mean? Like, that's important. Like, blessing in disguise, Ralph Friedgen comes to Maryland for all of us.
For sure.
You know what I mean? So I think it's extremely important that you build some kind of relationship with the coaching staff. Obviously, you're not going to have all their time, but for you to have a relationship, especially during a recruiting phase. Like,
Yes.
I had a couple guys who recruited me that, man, I mean, if you weren't coaching there, I'd have come
No
just
doubt.
off the strength of you.
No
You
doubt.
know what I mean? So, relationship building is what this game is all about.
No doubt.
It's what's given us the brotherhood that we've had for almost 25 years. And a lot of guys don't really understand that now, but they will later.
No doubt. No doubt. Very important. That's well said. Bruce, talk to me about Maryland. How the heck you got to College Park, right? Loxley recruited you, right? Vanderlinden was the head coach. And it's funny because I was getting recruited by Loxley too. Loxley wanted me, but unfortunately, he didn't have money to give me, right? At that point in time. And he was trying to convince me to walk on. And I was like, look, as much as I love you, Lox, and I love Maryland, I want to be a Terp. I'm getting full go up in Morgantown. Like
Mhm.
my mom was like, look, we're full go, Mike. How was that recruiting process for you? Like when did Maryland come into the picture? And when did it hit you where you were like, man, I'm going to be in College Park?
So, a couple things, right? Number one, I wanted to go to West Virginia. I'm a huge Amos Zero Way fan,
Oh, yeah.
right? So they never recruited me. Thank you.
Yeah.
But number two, I had an alumni of my high school that went to the University of Maryland that kind of pitched it to my head coach. And at the time, Maryland was not on my radar at all, but he was very, very adamant that I gave them a look, for the simple fact of you had the chance of playing early,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so Maryland recruited myself, they recruited Scott Smith, and they recruited Jafar,
Yeah.
right? And Jafar and I have been friends since we were 12, 13.
Yeah.
So we all went on the visit together. And so, let's just say it felt like home,
Yeah. So, yeah.
right? It
Love it.
felt like home. The coaching staff at the time, it felt like the right thing for me to do.
For sure.
Locks was an added bonus because you know me and his relationship.
Yeah.
Um, but the guys around me, it just felt like I belonged.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you get that feeling once you go to the right place and you don't want to leave,
Mm-hmm.
right?
No
And
doubt.
so, and that's exactly how it went for me. And so, not only that, it was 2 hours away from
I was
home.
home away from home. Your family could come. The whole
They
nine.
can come and watch me, 5 6 times a year, and it's not too much of a burden or stress on them. And we had these discussions like, Bruce, if you go to Michigan, we're probably going to see you maybe once or twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was very important for me that my parents my father, and more importantly, because he put the ball in my hand, it was very important for me that he got to watch me play.
For sure.
You
For sure.
know, so that 2 hour journey was really nothing, and it just made sense. So I remember, after I had surgery, I just had finished having surgery. We had already gone on a visit, and I called Jafar. I said, "Man, I'm about to commit to Maryland," and he's like, "I was thinking the same thing."
Really?
Right. And we called Vandy and Locks and Coach Hef that night.
That's great.
It took Scott about 3 more months, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
he ended up coming around.
That's great. That's great. So, I mean, Bruce, how lucky I was to be able to play with you was like, I mean, just all the guys around us, right? But you, like, look, you and I are touching the ball an awful lot, right? Like, think about that. And what we were able to accomplish as a duo, as best friends, as teammates is something I'll cherish forever. So I was really lucky to have you in that backfield. So, my man.
Man, I appreciate that, bro. It's funny that you say something like that because, I try my best to stay connected, right? And I realize when we're away from the game, like that brotherhood, sometimes it's lost in translation as time goes along.
For sure.
And I want these kids to really understand the relationships that you build when you go to school, or the relationships that you build in that locker room, they will be with you for the rest of your life.
100%.
We are living testaments to that. They will be with you for the rest of your life in good times and in bad. Like, man, I love my Terps, bro.
No doubt. No doubt. So, speaking about our guys, right? They all look up to you. It's just nature of the beast, right? You've been there, you've done that, you've played at a high level, you've played in the NFL, you've played in the CFL, like you've done it all. What is one piece of advice, right, that you give these kids? Now, remember, they're all in high school, freshmen, all the way through their senior year. Some haven't started the recruiting process yet. Some are just getting their feet wet with it, and some are in freshman ball. You're giving one piece of advice. You're living it right now with your son. What are you telling your son, right? When it comes to being a good teammate and putting on a good show so that we can play at that next level.
Well, the one thing I tell my son is, if you're not doing something every day to get better, then you're cheating the game, and
No doubt.
you're cheating yourself.
No doubt.
There's somebody out here that's working harder than you, and that's the one thing that drove me. Like, I didn't want anybody to say I was a slacker. I didn't want anyone to say that I didn't work, that I wouldn't punch the clock. So if you're not working, you're not playing.
No
That's
doubt.
number one. Number two, this game has to mean something to you. You have to find your reason why,
Mm-hmm.
right? And for me, my reason was to a better life, to get out of Philadelphia. Somebody like my son, he's already been born out. So, he has to find his own reason why. Why are you willing to sacrifice your time, your effort, and your body for this game?
For sure.
Like, so finding your reason why is monumental, right? And then have fun with it, man. Like, you don't get to play this game but for so long. Have fun with it. Like, really, like, soak in every moment. There are a lot of moments that we've all forgotten that we should have soaked in. You know what I mean?
No doubt. No.
Like, I wish
I would give to go through a one more 2-minute drill.
one more, man. I'm trying to tell you. Like, when I talked to Ralph on the phone, it, Ralph said to me, "Man, I sure didn't realize what I had until you were gone."
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
say, yeah, so just take advantage of the opportunities that you have, because this game is not forever, and it can provide you an amazing life, and that's for certain.
100%. Both financially, physically, emotionally, mentally, the whole nine. The
The,
brotherhood, it all comes with the package.
the whole nine. You already know, when one of us hurts, we all hurt.
No doubt.
And when we go to war, we go to war together. And it's nothing like having 128 other guys you can go to war with.
Well, so, and that's going to lead into my last question. Maryland, right? Your favorite moment. right? You
Oh,
have a lot of great moments, right? But you get to college, you get to that next level, you're playing at a young age, right? ACC Player of the Year. You got 2 more years ahead of you, 2 more bowl victories, right? What is your best moment as a college football player at the University of Maryland?
wow. Wow. Wow.
It's a tough question, but there's got to be one that sticks out where you're like, man, this made it all worth it, right?
I'm gonna give you two.
Okay.
The first time I started,
Yeah.
I'll remember every play. The
North
first time,
Carolina at home.
North Carolina at home, Julius Peppers, all those guys.
Curry. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just solidifying who I was and what I was about on the football field.
Yeah.
Never, I'll never forget that moment. Um, and the next one, oh Jesus, the next one is when the goalpost came down after '01,
Clemson.
Clemson, like something that at the time Bird had
Never.
never seen in 20, 30 years, right? So that was one of two. And then I'm gonna be perfectly honest, the Gator Bowl, with it being the last game that I played in, and I played in that with a sprained AC joint. I wasn't coming out.
Remember that.
You know what I mean? And to be able to finish it the way we finished it.
100%.
You know what I mean? To be able to go out with a bang the way we went out with a bang, and not even knowing all the backstories that were associated, not knowing the backstory with you, not knowing the backstory, with Suter, what have you, not knowing it. It just knowing it now, it's like, man,
Yeah. Put a
we were
stamp.
put a stamp on it, and put a stamp on these 5 years. And the 3 years were rough. I think we had 33 wins. Like,
Yep.
we were up there with Miami.
Yep.
You
One of
know,
only 5 programs to do that.
exactly. So, to be a part of that, to be a part of a rich tradition, to do it with all of you guys, like,
No doubt.
couldn't write a better ending to that story.
No doubt. No doubt. I couldn't agree more. The goalpost, I will admit, I was jealous because I was there not as a dressed player. I had to stand on the sideline in street clothes. However, the very next year, the goalpost came down again, or maybe it didn't, but we rushed the field, NC State. We beat the
Mm-hmm.
Tigers, right?
What's crazy, Scotty? You got to experience it. You got to experience it from two perspectives,
I did.
right? You got to see, just from watching, what it took to get there.
Mm-hmm.
You got to see what it took. You got to see the sacrifice that it went in to get there, right?
No doubt. Which was
And
nerve-wracking, by the way, because I'm like, man, if I got to go through all this next year as a starter, it's a lot on my plate.
but I think it made you appreciate it a little bit more once you got there,
100%.
right? It's all about perspective.
For sure.
And so, understanding the mantle was high, like, you were ready to rise to the occasion,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know.
I was lucky, blessing in disguise, that I wasn't thrown into the fire as soon as I transferred in. To your point, I got to sit and relax, but learn and practice and see how it was done from your end, right? And be in meetings every day and be in practice and being in practice and understanding what it took to get to that point. So no,
Mm-hmm.
it was a great year for me looking back on it. So, well, Bruce, man, I appreciate it, bro. You're my dog. I thank you for hopping on. These kids look up to you. They think the world of you, and they're going to soak in with the knowledge that you're giving them. So, I appreciate you joining me and speaking the truth.
No, man, it's my pleasure, man. I appreciate you having me.
Yes, sir.